Hello and welcome to the Sustainability Experts, a podcast that brings you helpful advice on sustainable business. I'm your host, Vanessa Thompson, and in this episode, we're covering data collection for a green revolution with our incredible guest, Andy Bhattacharya. Andy is a thought leader and innovator known for applying AI to greener supply chains. He's the founder of AmploGlobal Incorporated, a leading firm in sustainability risk management platforms, as well as the author of numerous books, including Industry 5.0 and the Data Economy. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much.
And I know I introduced you, but I would love if you could introduce yourself and tell us your story and tell us really how you came to this intersection between sustainability and data.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for having me. So first of all, if I really share my journey with you, I started my career as a supply chain expert. So did my engineering, got into a campus recruitment, started a consulting job, purely in supply chain programs. And what I've learned in the first few years in supply chain is it really touches the entire value chain. And as I was learning and wanting to go back to school for my MBA, I really was wanting to see what's there beyond supply chain. So I shifted from supply chain to private equity, worked in Wall Street for a couple of years. And then I came back to consulting. So when I came back to consulting, I was trying to align at that time with the market demand. So supply chain was there. Now I have an exposure to the Wall Street and private equity. And then I really moved into industrial Internet of Things, which is basically which I call real-time supply chain intelligence and manufacturing intelligence. So, and then once I was getting into these arenas, I felt that data was and is, of course, been a very, very big focus. And as you know, there's a saying that data is the new oil. So now I would say data and sustainability is the new oil. So then I moved from supply chain, private equity, manufacturing, data, really drove industrial Internet of Things, where I got exposed to the whole agri-tech industry with heavy equipment like John Deere, helping farmers to do real-time analytics of the health and life of the crop production. That's where I picked up sustainability. So how do you measure the soil quality? How do you measure the air quality and the seasonality of producing crops and committing to the distributors and the Chamber of Commerce and others and the retailers? And at the same time, how do you bring a social aspect besides the economic aspect? How do you help farmers to grow their business? How they can really see that counterfeit not happening. Their crops are going, their crops and seeds are really manufacturing the products. The products are going to the table, what you and I really consume. And so then I went through a circle from supply chain, private equity, manufacturing, industrial IoT, data, and then sustainability, wherever I played. I think the only, I would say a little different mode of career that I had was private equity. But other than that, I really felt a connection between supply chain, manufacturing, IoT, and sustainability. But the private equity career has really helped me to get into M&A, merger and acquisitions, where I really helped organizations to acquire small organizations who are very focused on industrial Internet of Things, where I got actually exposed to IoT. But other than that, that's how I shifted my career now mainly into, which I call purpose-led. So every time I was I wouldn't say shifting my career, but just managing the career going in the market demand direction. And then right now I feel that what I'm doing is I finally found the purpose, be it data, be it sustainability, be it supply chain, be it manufacturing, be it industrial IoT. I feel that there is a purpose, there is economics to it because we all have to earn money. And with purpose and economics, I feel that I finally could feel, and I have a long way to go. It's like I could create that impact, right? That's how my career has shaped up.
Yeah, thank you for telling that story. And I think it's so interesting to hear how people come to this kind of purpose-led mission. And of course, that's led you to found AmploGlobal, which is a really interesting platform. And so I really want to kind of dive into this, especially platforms, because I think our audience is going to be very interested in learning more about this. But really, it all starts when we talk about ESG platforms, it starts with risk management. And environmental social governance, otherwise known as ESG, has truly been designed as a risk management strategy. That was kind of the intention for an investor to look at their investment holistically, look at all of the financial and non-financially material relevant issues from an environmental, social, and governance standpoint to really look at everything that could affect the valuation of that investment. So can you really talk about how sustainability can manage risk?
Absolutely. So sustainability, first of all, has to be, and I feel as a practitioner, has to be one of the 4 or 5 transformation agendas for the leaders.
Mm.
We are in the era of digitization, but the decisions are being made by humans like you and I still, and hopefully it will be in the digitization era, in the AI era that we are in. Decisions have to be made by us. Of course, it has to be informed decision with data and AI, but sustainability is an arena that has to be a transformation agenda. What I feel as a practitioner, and from the field, I will say this, I don't think every leader is getting into that motion. And it's very regional. When I travel to South America, when I travel to Europe, UKI, India, Singapore, Dubai, US, Canada, Mexico, every region has a different need. Every region has a different perspective and different goals. But if you really emulate the goals of UN, United Nations, they have 17 goals that they have laid out. First of all, supply chain has to embrace those 17 goals. When I say supply chain, the value chain, tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, OEM, original equipment manufacturer, and that can be anyone, right? A CPG company, automotive company, everyone has its own product, OEM. And then you get into distributor, retailer, and consumers like you and I. So this whole value chain, really managing uh, a better supply chain than ever, especially post-COVID. And also, if you really count on deglobalization, nearshoring is happening a lot in supply chain. And once you have nearshoring after COVID, where the concentration from China is coming out, it's all about how do you a sustainable value chain. And that's where sustainability come into play. And the first thing in this whole arena of sustainability is how do you manage your risk? Is risk a new concept? Absolutely not. Is sustainability risk management a new concept? Absolutely yes. And I always say this as a practitioner. I say that, look, sustainability is not new. It is net new. And that net new is so deep that you need experts and PhDs and climate technology champions, right? I'll give an example. When I walk into the floor of manufacturing company in Detroit or a food and beverage company in St. Louis, Missouri, two different. One is a process industry, one is a discrete industry. Automotive is discrete industry, food is process industry. Every time I'm walking the floor, there's waste, right? How do you manage it? If you have to manage it, you need to either train the union workers rightly, or you need to improve more digital pods to do waste management. And how do you take that waste and go to do landfill regulations? So you're continuously improving your supply chain. This has to roll up to the desk of CEO or a chief supply chain office and say, look, I need X number of dollars to transform my net new supply chain with sustainability. And I'm going to save around 23% of your bottom line. And this will create low product return because experience will be better at the end and it will hit the top line. Right?
Yeah.
Really see this entire gamut of operations management, roll it up to a CXO level conversation. You can talk about risk management. I just give an example of risk management.
Yeah.
This can be financial risk also, green loan risk also. I'm just focusing on supply chain in this conversation. I can give non-supply chain examples as well. So that risk is no more a top line, bottom line risk. That risk is if I have to access a new market, Vanessa, I need to do cross-border adjustment mechanism, paying the taxes properly for my carbon leakage. That's new normal. That's a new risk. If I want to get a new loan for my energy management solution, I need to let the banker know as a borrower when I will give the money back, because it's just not producing the energy. I need to now measure my environmental, social governance parameters. A bank is not giving a loan to a windmill company because the windmill company has really, when they put the windmill on the ocean bed, they have really negatively impacted the biodiversity of the ocean bed. That person doesn't get a loan. You manage the risk.
Yeah.
So think about these examples where risk management is a part of the transformation. Is the industry there? You know what? I would love to say yes, it's there. It's not there.
Yeah.
So the program that we have developed, the program I have developed, even outside my entrepreneurial journey in the last 5 years, I always say this: start with risk before report. So
like that.
risk management is an arena that I feel like leaders need to listen in, master it more, bring technologies in the mix, data in the mix. Without data, it's nothing, right? And how do you bring the partnerships together to manage this risk? Because you
Yeah.
cannot solve the problem alone.
Yeah.
You have to bring partners to manage the entire value chain risk. So risk is a big component of sustainability, and that's where we are focused on in my entrepreneurial journey.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a really good summary of what's happening in the space. And of course, to have, accurate risk management, you have to have data collection. And so, let's kind of also talk about the value of data and the role of sustainability reporting. So why is, data collection and reporting valuable to companies?
Let's talk about data, which is true for everyone. For all these personas I talked about in the last 30 seconds, I think I talked about 5 or 6 CXOs. Informed decision making is extremely critical, and I feel like data have to drive it. Now, you can say, Andy, look, do you think that we are all collecting all the environmental, social governance data from a value chain that we talked about? The answer is no. The answer is no. Where we need to drive from a transformation agenda of risk, taking a product like, let's pick on Amplify 4.0, how you enable a gap analysis, how do you enable a heat map to tell the audience, chief data officer, that look, irrespective of your regulations, irrespective of the compliance, I know you're only looking at that from a sustainability angle, but don't look into sustainability angle only on those aspects. If you do not collect these data, if you have a tsunami in Indonesia, you cannot predict that, it will affect your inventory that you're storing in Indonesia.
Right.
A fire hazards in Bakersfield, California, right? If you're not managing the fires, tsunami, cyclone, all these parameters correctly, it's very hard to do real analysis and risk analysis. So that's where data will be very important. But I can also tell you the catch in sustainability as a practitioner, what we are seeing, Vanessa, is like, not everybody has data. If I go and ask a strawberry company in Bakersfield, Illinois, Bakersfield, California, sorry, there's an Illinois as well, I would say, look, can you give me some data from the last 6 months where your crops have been damaged because of weather, fertilizers, chemicals, shipments, wrong temperature of the truck? Oh, I have that one, wrong temperature of the truck. I have that, but I don't have the others because I have
Right.
industrial Internet of Things on my truck. I have sensors in my truck. Andy, I can give you that data. I cannot give you the
Yeah.
data on the climate. I said, look, when you talk about data collection, it has to be end to end. Are we
Yeah.
there yet in sustainability data collection? We're not there, but we
Yeah.
will get there because all the partners that we work with, Moody's, Bloomberg, S&P Index, it's all about it's all about getting the zip code by zip code idea, how the weather, let's pick on weather it would be, or any other. It could be not only weather, it can be water contamination, whatever it is, water, industrial water, anything. By zip code, what's the history? What's my score? What the organization needs to do to really create a good, like, task force climate disclosure,
Yeah.
financial disclosure. TCFD is a framework. So that's a big challenge. There
Yeah.
is not an entire good news right now that we all have the data. But yes, data have to be brought in on the table to make it more transformative and more informative.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of takes me from, looking at data collection to now also reporting, and specifically ESG reporting, which is something that AmploGlobal's known for in terms of really creating accurate reporting for organizations. Why do you think that, reporting and specifically ESG reporting is important for an organization?
Great question. So if you go to any med devices or a life sciences company, it will be the first thing I hear is that, look, Andy, I do GXP, good
Mm,
X practice, good manufacturing practice, good commercial practice. I'm already mature in this. So what's
hmm
new in ESG? That's one vertical who's very mature, right? Industry
Yeah.
vertical. The other vertical that I get into, let's say cosmetics, let's say retail, fashion. They there is an arena where we are seeing reporting is definitely holding a big seat from a CFO's desk. It's not that the pharma, med devices, life sciences are not. They're also, but they're a little bit more mature because they're
hmm
already into the compliance from a long historical time. Food and beverage industry, if you really see their food modernization programs they do, they're all report to FDAs. So what's
mm
new in this whole ESG reporting, right? What's new is it's not about just putting it a regulatory compliance hat and delivering the report. It's about in every bit of your business unit, from finance to procurement to supply chain to new product design, every one is emitting carbon. Everyone,
mm
right? So how do you manage that? In each of this zone, there's a big challenge of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
hmm
In every business unit, there's a big challenge of governance, which we always have. You
Yeah.
talk to a bank, they say, look, I'm the best in the governance. But there's still things are happening where risk management is a big thing out there in the financial industry.
Yeah.
So the message that I'm passing here is these reporting is not only just because I have to do regulations, I'm doing it. Because
Yeah.
I'm doing 10K, I'm doing other regulations reports, and I'm doing a few other things.
hmm
But what I'm not considering, if I'm not doing the ESG reporting, is in every aspect of E, S, and G, where my organization can do better, impacting your top line and bottom line.
Yeah.
So you get to hear this in reporting a lot. It's called materiality. It's an accounting term,
hmm
right? What is the material for me to report? What is material for me not to report?
Yeah.
That is very important section for a CFO and the other CXOs to drive. That look, I'm not going to report these many things. I'm going to report these many things, right? So
Yeah.
I feel that reporting on ESG is not only for brand or not only for regulations, it's also for purpose-led practice. It's also
Mm.
for good practice. It is also for improving your value chain. It is also for um, making your partners aware of your uh, product tale, right? It's like, how do you tell the tale of the product journey, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it is important. And what you will see, Vanessa, is that not everybody in the value chain is in the same maturity. They're all different maturity. So, but still an organization, when they decide to do reporting, this ESG reporting is a very important component. Don't think about brand. Don't think about only regulations. Think more than that.
Yeah. I like that, being selective for a purpose and being strategic about that, I think is really important. I think that almost kind of leads me to one of the topics you talk about in your book, which is digitalization 5.0 and being selective for a purpose in that sense. So, I think that's really incredible. You talk about in your book, digitalization 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0. Can you kind of describe what is digitalization 5.0? How is this useful for companies?
Absolutely. And I will say this, that when I always had a fascination to look into skylines. When I was growing up, I used to watch cricket in Australia, New Zealand, and in Sydney. It was amazing. The night skyline always has amazed me, that how
Mm,
beautiful Sydney's skyline was and is. But as I grew up, I asked this question in my head, that who's paying the bills of all these lights,
mm,
right? And then I said, okay, maybe at some point of time when I grow up, I will I'll do something around energy management. I started my career in supply chain, really understood the automation piece of 3.0, 4.0 came in. Um, Suddenly this 5.0 is being talked about, and 5.0 is all about a sustainable automation. It's all
mm,
about selective automation, which means if you don't need to lit the buildings at night just to make your skyline beautiful, please don't do that. Let's save some energy. Okay?
right.
It's about purpose led. It's about emotion. It's about energy management. It's about um, coming out of a rat race that my skyline needs to be the best in the among 15 cities in the world, right?
Yeah.
And we are basically consuming a lot of energy for that. And if you really see the overall Paris Agreement, if you see the overall um, management of um, how do we drive more um, heat dissipation, right, in the ecosystem. Energy is one of the most powerful consumption of, I would say, and consumption as well as dissipation, both are happening from the
Mm,
energy. So 5.0 is where you are making a decision that when a robot is walking on the floor of an automotive company and it's completely automated, or a single thing is non-automated, from a door that's putting on the car till the car is going out, it's all robots. I'm being asked to go and consult and advise and maybe implement vectorization of robots, which means what? It's X, Y, and Z axis of the arm, and the arm movement of the robot needs to be optimized so that the heat dissipation is minimal.
mm,
So the capacity run of a robot is generally 83%. That's a good run, because that's where the life cycle of the robot also stays back for 15 to 20 years, right? But now, can I increase the life cycle of the life of the robot now by managing that arm movement and in turn the heat dissipation that's going out, right? So that's where your selective automation comes into play.
mm,
That even sometimes if the robot is lesser than 83% capacity run, that's okay, because I'm managing my consumption of the electricity well enough. So that's where 5.0 comes into play,
mm.
purpose-led automation.
Yeah, being selective. And that's really interesting to hear you say that. Kind of thinking about this in mind, how do you think businesses should be thinking about reporting now with this kind of framework, with this kind of ideology? What needs to change in terms of how companies are reporting? Where are they now and where should they go? Kind of knowing this.
So, great question. And my answer to that would be relook into your supply chain. I'll give an example again. A retail organization completely relooks its backward supply chain and empowered a contract manufacturer as a tier one to manage all the tier twos and tier threes.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's double click on that. So from an end product to the raw material coming in, the cotton, maybe there are 26 layers of bill of materials, 26 layers of manufacturing instructions to manufacture that shirt. Some organizations are cutting in the middle. They said, look, I'm going to not worry about the last 12 automation. I will focus on where my automation is important. I'm going to bring a tier one who will manage the rest of the tier ones and tier twos and tier threes. I don't care about that automation anymore. Spend money, spend my cost in operations, OPEX and CAPEX cost out there. And I will relook into consolidation of 2, 3 partners and cut the BOM, bill of materials, to 6 levels instead of 12 levels.
Yeah.
What's the change? The change is, A, they're outsourcing some of the manufacturing. That takes away the scope 1 burn. Once you do buy scope 2, now they have to manage a better value chain to report the scope 2 back to scope 1, which is the original equipment manufacturer, and beyond, which is scope 3. Now this whole tier 1 partner is managing the scope 3 for the OEM. So look into a new normal value chain where outsourcing is maybe the new normal with the contract manufacturing organizations, cutting the BOM into half and calculate the carbon emission in that way where it will be minimalistic or optimal. So the whole supply chain is looking and relooking the bottom line and the top line, keeping scope 1, 2, and 3 in mind.
Yeah.
A great way of relooking into the reporting as well.
Yeah, I like that. And I know you touched on, part of the solution here, but just kind of also double clicking on some of the problems in terms of where companies are really at, and then hopefully kind of getting into some of the solutions that you've created, as well as, some other platforms in the space. Can you also identify, some of the problems in terms of where ESG is, and ESG reporting is, and then kind of we'll get into kind of some of the platforms and solutions to a lot of these challenges.
Absolutely. So in any journey of transformation, and I said in the beginning, I will say now as well, Vanessa, is it's all in a leadership's head that am I looking ESG and sustainability as a transformation agenda or just a reporting agenda? The motions are different. The mindset is different. The way of execution and culture would be different.
Yeah.
The one leader who is thinking about reporting, the journey is easier. Is it mature? No,
Right.
it's easy because you collect data and you report, right? The journey where you have a transformation agenda with sustainability is difficult because now you're really re-looking into the value chain, the example I just gave, right? So what's the problem, Irina? The problem is maturity of the value chain. I'm asking a supplier, hey, I need this, this, and this data. Oh, you know what? It's not in the contract, Mr.
Yeah.
OEM or Miss OEM, right? It's not in the contract. I would not share my carbon data with you. Okay, renegotiate the contract. Second, when you renegotiate the contract, you may have to share some intellectual properties and hints of the intellectual properties. How do you do that? Do you make them a preferred vendor? Maybe yes, right? Advantage in bracket reduces the lead time, which is a good thing for supply chain. Third problem, when I'm enabling this whole value chain on environmental social governance, does the company or the organization or the OEM have enough digitization to collect and hold the data? Somebody can say, hey, you know what? Andy, Vanessa, I'm going to give you the data.
Yeah.
But does the company have the maturity to hold the data? Oh, no, I need to change the entire SAP implementation for that. Because I actually implement with 39 fields. Now I need 43 fields where I get the 4 fields from. I need to do an entire customization, no budget, project gets scrapped.
Yeah.
Right? These are challenges. Now take to the next level. So we talked about value chain partnerships. We talked about technology. Now let's talk about handshaking with various aspects of reporting, right? Biggest problem is to even identify what to report.
Yeah.
We call, I think I mentioned this, it's called materiality. Now people are asking, let's do double materiality, which is not only how I'm doing on my ESG, is it really impacting my earning per share as well?
Yeah.
Right? Or do I do double materiality? That's a big challenge, right? And then your double materiality will be different by different regions. How do you break all this? So there's a lot of like gray area in the arena, in the world of digitization, which is 0 and 1, right?
Yeah.
The gray area where people are still figuring out. That's where I feel it's an opportunity also, right? Both for data and AI and ESG come together, relook into the overall fundamentals of value chain, supply chain. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting for companies, particularly, the companies who, many of the listeners might be representing, to understand platforms like this. And I'd love to kind of hear from you about the value of AmploGlobal and the platforms that it's created as well, too, in terms of what is the value here for a client potentially.
So the immediate value we have felt in the last 5 years is value for information. So once we have a template, 4x3 matrix. So the platform, it's named Amplify 4.0. They have 18 templates, 18, from Global Reporting Initiative to EPA to UN SDGs, the 17 goals, various water programs, various other environmental, social governance programs. There are various templates, GHG, greenhouse gas emission templates, all AirFrag, all these templates lead for the green building. So this platform has templates, means it has the entire booklet. If I open lead, it's around 100 pages, right? What this platform has done, it has taken those 100 pages and created a 4x3 matrix with all the 70, 80 best practices. So the first value this platform brings is value for information. If you're a mid-market, small market, large market, you have not that enough knowledge to know what LEED is. In this case, let's pick on the green building example. LEED is there in the platform. You open it up. You do not need to read, do not go to the internet. You have the 4x3 matrix, level 1 to level 5 explosion on each of the capability. I exactly know that this is my template where I will go after. And why value for information? Part 2 is we are bringing data from outside. And we're immediately giving industry vertical-led score that, look, we even haven't collected the data, but here is the template telling you where you stand.
Right.
Second, the next value we bring is the value for insights, which is now I have the template. I may or may not have the internal data of the organization. You can change some setups on the platform and do an AI mesh. It's like a convoluted neural network mesh. It takes the data from outside, takes the data from inside, creates some algorithms, some causal analysis, and spits out a Gen AI document recommendation, value for insight. And then these recommendations gets converted into risk cards and carbon calculator cards, or S and G calculator as well, because carbon is generally E, right?
Yeah.
The third thing, that value that we are bringing, is value for integration. So once you have this whole appetite of risk scores and everything done, we are not a rating, this company is not a rating agency, right? It is basically doing the internal scoring of the readiness of the platform, of the organization, scoring. Then this whole thing can go and integrate with any downstream, midstream software platforms to really push this whole risk analysis outcome, feed into a financial system, feed into a enterprise resource planning system, feed into another, let's say, carbon accounting system.
Yeah.
Bring the data back and do one more round of risk analysis, right? So our platform is value for information, value for insights, and value for integration. Those are three value we bring.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you described, some of the value of these templates. And you've often, talked about in other interviews that, a lot of these platforms are like the TurboTax of ESG, which I love. I think that really gives kind of a context for it as well, too. But I also want to hear kind of deeper into like what are some of the outcomes related to a lot of these templates? You kind of talked about the value and how it can integrate with other systems, but what are some of the results that you've found with these templates?
I think the biggest value that we bring, which is I feel it's rare in the industry right now, is financial impact analysis.
Hmm.
Everything that we are doing, every motion that we are figuring out for a value chain, one thing is constant from our side. That is, if I do this piece, what's your cost impact bottom line? What's your revenue impact top line? What's your new market entry chance? What's your cross-border taxation carbon leakage that you have to pay for? It's always converting into a financial impact. I think that's a big
Hmm.
outcome. The second outcome that we focus on is continuously bringing actuals back in and continuously updating the benchmarking and the heat maps so that a decision is made in a non-silo environment, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And once we bring those 4x3 templates, at least 3-4 leaders are working together in that template. As they see this, as they view the actuals versus planned, a lot of these decision-making outcomes become easier. That's second. So financial impact, decision-making impact. Third is ultimately, which is very important to understand, this templates that we build, as you mentioned, right? It's like, I call it TurboTax of ESG. It's nothing but a backend data model. When you build the 4x3 matrix, be it GHG emission, scope 1, 2, and 3, GRI, IFRAG, whatever it is, right? Lead. It's creating a data model behind the scene on how to collect the data with this graphical user interface templates. You can export the entire template. It breaks down from level 1 to level 5 by capability, and you can hand over to a CIO's office to collect data. So this also becomes a data template as an outcome.
Hmm.
So 3 broad outcomes: financial impact, of course, the overall decision-making impact, and then your data collection impact.
Wow. I really like that, leaders could use this also to understand how to collect that relevant material data too. I think that's really fantastic. Have you kind of seen some interesting, learnings from clients in terms of how they've been implementing this? Are there any kind of, stories about what are the results have been, from clients or, even other platforms in terms of how they're implementing these templates?
Absolutely, and great question. Nothing like a client outcome and experience, right? So I have seen various types of outcomes with various steps of maturity in the program, and it also depends on the maturity of the client as well.
Right.
When I'm going to a client who is delivering sustainable packaging
Mm-hmm.
to a winery business, they are very mature on how they would be really make it not only purpose-led, but also like design-led. A new bottling is happening, how the customer experience will be improving, right?
Yeah.
For them, the maturity is high. It's a high quotient maturity. And generally having a conversation and implementation and outcomes are easier in that way. But there are customers and clients where we have worked and we are working is where they're not that mature, and that's not their fault, right? It's about what's their mandates are to close business and win business and deliver business.
Yeah.
So now how do you drive a deeper conversation when sustainability outcomes are not in their top one or two agendas? How do you drive money well spent outcome to a CXO, convincing him or her or them, talking about, you know what, in the last 3 months, we have learned this, this, and this, and here how your growth should look like. Some clients will be very short term. They will say a lovely program. And you know what? The platform is great, but I will come back to you, which we don't want. We want perpetual revenue, right? But some clients will say, yep, I have learned the POC. It's very good implementation done. I'm going to lift and shift to Europe. I'm going to lift and shift to Latin America. And or now I will implement along with SAP or any other solutions, because this whole arena of sustainability management will be an integral part of my new normal supply chain in the next 5 years. Of course, in bracket, if you have a compliance deadline, it's anyhow, you have to do it.
Yeah.
But how do you take the conversation and outcome with the customer beyond compliance? That's the challenge for sustainability practitioners, right? Everybody will do it for compliance, and those are small programs, right? And their budget expires very quickly, right? But how do you take that conversation of an outcome and lift this up to a transformation concept?
Yeah.
That's where I will challenge myself and every one of us, because that's where the world has to go for having a purpose-led ecosystem.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for, talking about, ESG reporting, giving us an idea of what's happening in the space, and then also how companies can really report effectively. And, one other topic I really want to talk about is partnership. This is a topic that a lot of sustainability leaders focus on, because, no company has hit net zero without offsets. This is something that no organization or industry has ever done before. So partnership is really key to be able to innovate and scale at the rate we need to hit these net zero targets. And so this is something that, you've really spoken to as a thought leader as well. How should companies partner in this space? When should they partner? How should they partner? How should they be thinking about this?
Absolutely. This is a very important topic. And I believe in this, that you cannot solve the problem alone. And that's where partnerships come into play in the ecosystem. So there are three sets of partnership, right? One partnership is enabling the customers to bring the right partners in their business model. That's one set of partnership. Suppose an industrial company wants to open a marketplace where they would like to bring all partners to use that only marketplace. That's a partnership model, right? That's a revenue share model. You want to play a sustainability angle role to that marketplace. That's whole one angle of it, right? So how do you enable partnership for the end customers and partners? That's one angle that has a strong sustainability angle, because not every partner has the same maturity.
Yeah.
Second angle of partnerships is for companies like us, where we will not solve the problem alone. How do you develop that partnership? And how do you take that one industry solution to market and then figure out the revenue shares?
Yeah.
Right? The third type of partnership is where you build the future, and innovation has to happen now. Not every partnership wants to be on the desk because they have to survive. We have to survive, right? So how do you create that partnership, which is not only doing the thing, which is I mentioned the second point, that we go together to solve a problem. While we are going together, how do you make sure you manage the innovation?
Yeah.
That's partnership, right? So partnership for the end customers, enabling them in the right partnership zone, partnership to deliver, partnership to innovate. That's how I see it.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I think, one application of, this kind of thinking is also partnering when it comes to supply chains in order to create transparency. And it's particularly, collecting data for transparency. There's no way to do that other than having really effective partnerships. So I kind of wanted to hear from you, how are you thinking about creating partnerships for data collection to create transparent supply chains?
Sure. So let's take this example of the supply chain transparency as a solution area. So let's take an example of a plant in California where we know that there are fire hazards. They have to make sure that they optimize the inventory locations across the country. And then we, as on the supply chain transparency program, we know, in this case, I'm talking about my startup, we know that we will do maybe 5 out of 10 things, which can be exactly the gaps the organization have, where they are not collecting the data correctly from a E, S, and G perspective. And also, maybe we will collect more data around, let's say, logistics, maybe going ahead and do some logistics optimization program. But we are definitely not collecting, let's say, item data, or let's say work in process, working capital data, inventory data at various inventory zones.
Right.
So think about these two examples where we are collecting data which are related to scope 1, 2, and 3. And there are special partners who just focus on inventory, cost of carrying inventory goods, and the whole 9 yards, right? These two partnerships will come together and create the entire transparency. Let's add one more to it. Neither of these two companies has RFID skill sets. Now we have to buy from a third company to create RFID chips to manage the data going to cloud real time. Third company. Let's do one more example, right? So one more scenario in this example. We have us collecting environmental, social, governance data, maybe some other supply chain related data. There's another company who's in the inventory data. We are bringing RFID in the mix. Now, we need to make sure all these 3 graphical user interface outcomes come as one mega graphical user interface outcomes, like a war room. So now think about the complexity of this, the RFID supplier and the 2 vendors who are helping the supply chain transparency. You have to have a broader graphical user interface to give them real-time analytics. So here's an example where it becomes more complicated when we talk about supply chain transparency. But our job in the ecosystem ultimately deliver making the things which is very complicated simple. That's the biggest challenge is. That's where partnership fails. So now how do you coexist with somebody like Amplify 4.0, somebody like, let's say, a supply chain vendor and an RFID vendor who makes RFID chips for the food safety modernization or some modernized supply chain modernization, let's say, okay? How do you build it? Now, let me add one more to it. Who will provide the industrial Internet of Things platform and cloud? Let's bring a hyperscaler. So that's where your partnerships has to be very well chosen, because you're spending that energy. And with that energy that you're spending, you need to have quick wins, low-hanging fruit, quick wins. Also have a larger vision to create a marketplace.
Wonderful. Very interesting. And, I have kind of just a last question, which is, do you have any last advice for businesses or our audience?
Be purpose-led, be bold. Please bring a change. And change is tough, but that's where we have to be the change makers. And I challenge every leader that there's a huge opportunity in the market where we could bring sustainable value chain and just not value chain. So please make a difference.
Thank you for that. And is there any way that our audience can follow you and follow the great work that you're doing?
Absolutely. You can visit www.amploglobal.com. And I'm at Anirban, ANIRBAN at amploglobal.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to see the response from our audience in terms of learning from the insights that you shared with us today. So thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sustainability Experts. If you liked the insights from our podcast, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We produce episodes with world-class executives every month and offer exclusive consulting and speaking services globally. Reach out to us and become a leader in your industry.